Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something that might seem familiar, but is actually deeply strange when you really think about it. New Year's Eve. That single moment when an entire planet collectively decides that time itself deserves a celebration, a fresh start, a reset button on existence itself. But here's the thing. The way you celebrate midnight on December 31st. Champagne, ball drop, maybe a kiss if you're lucky. That's just one tiny version of a story that's been told in thousands of different ways across human history. And some of these traditions, they're beautiful. Some are bizarre. And some are so dark, so rooted in ancient fear and superstition, that they'll make your Times Square celebration look like a children's birthday party. So before we begin, take a moment to like this if you're enjoying the content, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Because no matter where you are on this spinning rock, chances are you've got your own way of greeting the new year, and I want to hear about it. Now, dim the lights. Get comfortable. Maybe grab something to drink, because we're about to travel the world without leaving your seat. And by the end of this, you might just look at that champagne toast a little differently. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. January 1st is completely arbitrary. There's nothing magical about that date. The Earth doesn't complete an orbit. The moon doesn't shift into a new phase. The stars don't align. It's just a day. A day that humans decided, for mostly political and religious reasons, would mark the beginning of a new year. For most of human history, the new year began in spring. Think about it. That actually makes sense. Winter ends, seeds get planted, lambs are born, the world literally renews itself. The Romans originally celebrated New Year's in March, which is why September, October, November, and December have names that mean 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th month. Because they were. Then Julius Caesar came along in 45 BCE and decided to reform the calendar. He moved the start of the year to January 1st, naming the month after Janus, the two-faced Roman god who could look backward into the past and forward into the future simultaneously. How fitting. How perfectly symbolic for a holiday built on reflection and resolution. But even Caesar's calendar didn't stick everywhere. For centuries, different cultures celebrated New Year's at different times. Medieval England celebrated it on March 25th. France bounced between Christmas, Easter, and March. Russia didn't adopt January 1st until 1700, when Peter the Great forced it on them as part of his westernization campaign. So when you're counting down at midnight on December 31st, you're not participating in some ancient, universal human ritual. You're following a date picked by a Roman dictator 2,000 years ago and eventually imposed on most of the world through colonization, conquest, and cultural dominance. Cheerful thought, isn't it? But here's where it gets interesting. Despite this artificial construct, humans everywhere have created rituals around the turn of the year, whenever they decide it happens. And these rituals? They reveal something profound about what we fear, what we hope for, and what we're willing to do to make sure the next year doesn't completely destroy us. Spain. 12 grapes and 1 choking hazard. Picture this. You're standing in Puerta del Sol, Madrid's main square. It's December 31st, 11:59 p.m. Around you, thousands of people are clutching bags of grapes. Not champagne. Not noisemakers. Grapes. The clock tower looms above you, and as it begins to strike midnight, you have exactly 12 seconds to eat 12 grapes. 1 for each chime. 1 for each month of the coming year. And if you can manage this feat without choking, gagging, or spitting seeds everywhere, you'll have good luck for all 12 months. Miss a grape? That month is cursed. Choke on one? Well, that's an omen you really don't want to think about too hard. This is Las 12 Uvas de la Suerte, the 12 lucky grapes, and it's been a Spanish tradition since at least 1895. The origin story varies depending on who you ask. Some say it started as a way for the wealthy to mock the poor by showing off their abundance of grapes, an expensive winter fruit. Others claim it began in 1909 when Spanish grape farmers had a massive surplus and needed a marketing gimmick to sell their product. Whatever the truth, the tradition stuck. Today, even Spanish people living abroad will scramble to find 12 grapes on New Year's Eve. Grocery stores sell special packages of pre-counted grapes. Some are even pre-peeled and seedless, which feels like cheating, but also significantly reduces the choking risk. The Spanish take this seriously. In 2014, the Spanish Agency for Food Safety and Nutrition issued warnings about choking hazards, particularly for children and elderly people attempting the grape challenge. Emergency rooms across Spain report a spike in grape-related incidents every January 1st. People literally aspirate fruit in pursuit of good fortune. And here's the kicker. It has to be during those exact 12 chimes of midnight. Not before, not after. The timing is everything. This means that in a country where people regularly eat dinner at 10 p.m. and consider 11 p.m. early, New Year's Eve becomes a bizarre race against time, with everyone suddenly laser-focused on synchronized fruit consumption. But it works, at least psychologically. Studies have shown that rituals like this, even arbitrary ones, actually do make people feel more in control of their futures. The act of doing something, anything, makes us feel less helpless against the chaos of existence. And if that something involves rapid-fire grape eating in front of a clock tower, well, humans have done stranger things. Scotland, first footing and the fear of empty-handed strangers. Now let's travel north to Scotland, where New Year's Eve, called Hogmanay, is celebrated with more enthusiasm than Christmas itself. And at the heart of Hogmanay is a tradition called first footing that reveals just how superstitious humans can be about what crosses their threshold. The rules are specific. The first person to enter your home after midnight will determine your luck for the entire year. And that person better get it right. Ideally, your first footer should be a tall, dark-haired man. Why? Because in Scotland's history of Viking raids, a tall, blonde stranger at your door usually meant trouble, violence, and possibly your village being burned down. So the collective cultural trauma embedded itself in New Year's traditions. Dark hair equals safety. Blonde hair equals run. But it's not just about hair color. Your first footer cannot show up empty-handed. That's considered catastrophically bad luck. Instead, they should bring gifts, each one symbolic. Coal, so your house stays warm. Shortbread, so you'll never go hungry. Salt, for prosperity and flavor. Whiskey, for good cheer. And a black bun, a type of fruit cake, because apparently fruitcake exists in every culture's nightmare traditions. If a woman enters first, bad luck. If the person has flat feet, bad luck. If they're cross-eyed, extremely bad luck. If they arrive before the clock strikes midnight, you've basically jinxed the entire year. Some families take this so seriously that they'll arrange their first footer in advance, essentially hiring a tall, dark-haired male friend to show up at 12:01 a.m. with the proper offerings. In some communities, men make rounds of multiple houses, first footing for their entire neighborhood in a carefully choreographed ritual of luck distribution. And before the first footer can arrive, the house must be thoroughly cleaned. Not just tidied, but purged of the old year's bad energy. Ashes must be removed from fireplaces. Garbage must be taken out. Debts should be paid. Broken items should be fixed or discarded. You don't want to carry any of last year's misfortune into the new one. This isn't quaint. It's rooted in genuine anxiety about the future. In Scotland's harsh climate and tumultuous history, winter was a genuine threat. Food could run out. People could freeze. Illness could sweep through communities. The new year wasn't just a fresh start. It was a gamble with death. And if you could control anything, even something as simple as who walked through your door first, you grabbed onto that control with both hands. Today, Hogmanay celebrations include massive fire festivals, particularly in Stonehaven, where participants swing giant fireballs over their heads while marching through the streets. The fire symbolizes the sun's return, the defeat of darkness, and the purification of the coming year. It's primal, it's dangerous, and it's a reminder that New Year's traditions often have roots in our deepest existential fears. Denmark. Smashing plates as a love language. Let's talk about Denmark, where showing affection means committing property destruction. In Denmark, one of the most treasured New Year's traditions is saving up your chipped, cracked, or unused plates and dishes throughout the year. Not to donate them, not to recycle them, to violently hurl them at your friends and family's front doors on New Year's Eve. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Danes express love through porcelain-based vandalism. The tradition goes like this. On December 31st, you gather your pile of dishes and make rounds to the homes of people you care about. When you arrive, you don't knock politely. You smash the plates against their door, leaving a pile of ceramic shards on their doorstep, and then you leave. The homeowners then wake up on January 1st to discover whose front door has the biggest pile of broken dishes. And here's the twist. This is considered a good thing. The bigger the pile, the more loved you are. The more friends you have, the more good fortune you've accumulated. In Danish folklore, broken dishes at your doorstep drive away evil spirits and bad luck. The loud noise of shattering porcelain scares off malevolent forces, and the shards themselves act as a barrier, a protective circle of friendship, literally fragmented across your threshold. Imagine waking up to broken pottery everywhere and thinking, ah yes, I am deeply loved. It's the most Scandinavian thing imaginable. The tradition has obvious roots in sympathetic magic. Throughout history, smashing things has been associated with breaking curses, destroying bad luck, and creating loud noises to frighten away evil. In ancient times, bells were rung, drums were beaten, and things were deliberately broken to mark transitions and protect communities. Denmark has other interesting New Year's traditions too. They jump off chairs at midnight, literally leaping into the new year to avoid bad luck and ensure you start the year on the right foot, quite literally. There's also a tradition of eating kransekage, a towering cake made of almond paste rings stacked in a cone shape, often with a bottle of wine or champagne hidden in the center. Breaking into the cake represents breaking through obstacles. But the plate smashing remains the most iconically Danish tradition. It's communal, it's loud, it's slightly aggressive, and it perfectly captures the Scandinavian approach to expressing emotion. Practical, physical, and just strange enough to make outsiders question everything. Japan, 108 bells, one for each human weakness. While the Western world is popping champagne and singing Auld Lang Syne, Japan is participating in a radically different ritual, one that's less about celebration and more about spiritual purification through acknowledgement of human failure. The tradition is called Joya no King, New Year's Eve Bell, and it involves Buddhist temples across Japan ringing their bells exactly 108 times as midnight approaches. These aren't joyful, celebratory bells. These are deep, resonant, meditative sounds that echo through the cold December air, each strike lasting several seconds. Why 108? Because in Buddhist tradition, humans are believed to suffer from 108 worldly desires, or bano, earthly temptations and weaknesses that cause suffering and prevent enlightenment. These include obvious sins like greed, anger, and jealousy, but also more subtle afflictions like attachment, ignorance, and the fundamental delusion that we are separate from the rest of existence. Each bell strike is meant to cleanse one of these afflictions. The first 107 strikes happen before midnight, addressing the sins of the old year. The 108th and final strike occurs after midnight, a fresh slate for the new year, or at least as fresh as a slate can be when you're working with a species fundamentally prone to desire, attachment, and checking their phones every 30 seconds. The bells are rung by temple priests, and at many temples, members of the public can participate, taking turns pulling the massive wooden beam that strikes the bell. It's heavy, physically demanding work. You don't just casually ring a 108-year-old temple bell. You throw your body weight into it. You feel the vibration in your bones. The sound washes over you like a wave. Many Japanese families watch this on television. A New Year's Eve tradition, as standard as watching the ball drop in Times Square. The most famous bell ringing happens at Kainen Temple in Kyoto, where it takes 17 monks to ring the massive bell, one of the largest in Japan. One monk rides the beam itself, suspended in air as it swings. But the bells are just one part of Japan's elaborate New Year's traditions. Before midnight, families engage in osoji, a deep cleaning that goes far beyond dusting. We're talking about cleaning behind refrigerators, scrubbing bathroom tiles with toothbrushes, and washing windows until they're invisible. The goal is to enter the new year in a state of physical and spiritual cleanliness. Then there's toshi koshi soba, year-crossing noodles, eaten on New Year's Eve. The long, thin noodles symbolize longevity and the cutting away of the previous year's misfortunes. You must finish the entire bowl before midnight, or risk bringing bad luck into the new year. Unlike Spanish grapes, at least you get more than 12 seconds to eat. On New Year's Day itself, Japanese families eat osechi ryuri, elaborately prepared foods packed in layered boxes called jubako. Each food has symbolic meaning: black soybeans for health, herring roe for fertility, shrimp for long life, because their bent backs resemble elderly people. Preparing oseki takes days, but it means mothers don't have to cook during the first 3 days of the new year, giving everyone a break from daily labor. What strikes me about Japanese New Year's traditions is their focus on introspection rather than external celebration. While Western traditions focus on parties, fireworks, and extroverted joy, Japan's approach is quieter, more contemplative. It acknowledges human imperfection, not with guilt, but with acceptance and the commitment to do marginally better, knowing full well that next year you'll be back here again, listening to 108 bells remind you of your fundamental flawed nature. There's something deeply honest about that. The Philippines. Polka dots, loud noises, and fruit as architecture. Now we head to the Philippines, where New Year's Eve is less a holiday and more a full-scale assault on evil spirits through noise, patterns, and aggressive optimism. The Filipino New Year, Bagong Tayan, is celebrated with traditions so specific and numerous that locals joke you need a checklist to avoid accidentally cursing your entire year. The overriding philosophy: be as loud as possible, wear as many circles as possible, and for the love of God, don't clean or sweep on January 1st. Let's start with the noise. At midnight, the Philippines becomes the loudest place on earth. Fireworks explode everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Not just in official city displays, but in neighborhoods, backyards, streets, and occasionally where they really shouldn't be. People bang pots and pans, blow car horns, ring bells, blast music, and generally create such a cacophony that evil spirits have no choice but to flee to quieter countries. This isn't just tradition, it's practical spirituality. In Filipino belief, loud noises drive away the spirits and bad luck that might want to hitch a ride into the new year. The louder you are, the more protected you'll be. Every year, the Philippine Department of Health issues warnings about firecracker injuries, and every year, emergency rooms fill up with people who got a little too enthusiastic with their spiritual protection methods. Then there are the polka dots. On New Year's Eve, Filipinos wear clothing covered in round patterns, circles, dots, anything circular. Why? Because round shapes represent coins, and coins represent money, and money represents prosperity. The logic is airtight. Some people take this to extremes, wearing head-to-toe polka dots like they're cosplaying as a children's TV host. But fashion is a small price to pay for financial security. But the clothing is just the beginning. Fruits, particularly round fruits, must be displayed prominently in your home. The traditional number is 12 or 13 different fruits. representing the months of the year, with one bonus for extra luck. These aren't for eating, they're for display. You arrange them in bowls, on tables, sometimes in elaborate pyramids. Each fruit has meaning. Oranges for gold, grapes for abundance, apples for health. You must also have coins in your pockets at midnight. Not just bills, actual coins. Some people fill their pockets until they're jingling like human piggy banks. At midnight, you're supposed to jump while clutching your coins, ensuring that you'll rise financially in the new year. Children especially love this tradition, jumping repeatedly while coins scatter everywhere. The food traditions are equally specific. You need 12 round fruits on the table, but you also need pancit, noodles for long life, lechon, roast pig for prosperity, and sticky rice cakes called biko or tai koi that symbolize family cohesion. The stickiness literally represents sticking together. But here's where it gets really particular. You cannot clean, sweep, or wash anything on January 1st. Doing so means you're sweeping away or washing away your good fortune. Some families won't even take out garbage for the first 3 days of the year. You must leave your doors and windows open at midnight to let good fortune enter and bad fortune exit. But if someone exits your house right at midnight, that person will travel a lot in the coming year. You're also supposed to avoid wearing black or dark colors, as these attract negative energy. Instead, bright colors, reds, golds, yellows are preferred. Some people wear brand new clothes to symbolize a fresh start, though they have to have round patterns, of course. And speaking of fresh starts, every light in the house should be turned on at midnight to ensure a bright future. This includes closets, bathrooms, and that weird storage room you never use. Everything illuminated, everything visible, nothing hidden in darkness. The result of all these traditions is a New Year's Eve that feels like a combination of party, ritual, and performance art. You're managing your outfit, polka dots, your food, 12 round fruits, your noise level, maximum, your pockets, full of coins, your doors, open, and your behavior, no sweeping, all while trying to actually enjoy the celebration. But here's what's beautiful about it. Everyone is doing it together. Rich and poor, young and old, everyone follows roughly the same template. It creates a sense of collective participation in fate management. You're not just hoping for a better year, you're actively constructing one through synchronized ritual. Ecuador and Colombia, burning away the old year. Let's travel to South America, where they take the concept of out with the old, in with the new, to its logical, pyrotechnic conclusion. In Ecuador and parts of Colombia, New Year's Eve involves creating elaborate effigies representing the old year and then setting them on fire in the streets. These aren't small symbolic flames. These are massive bonfires of carefully constructed ecos viejos, old year dolls, stuffed with sawdust, newspaper, and often fireworks for extra dramatic effect. The effigies are dressed in old clothes and designed to represent either generic old men, politicians, celebrities, or pop culture characters. Basically, anything that represents the past year gets combusted. The tradition begins weeks in advance. Families and communities build their ecos viejos, some life-sized, some enormous, 2 or 3 stories tall. They're displayed in front of homes and businesses throughout December. Some are remarkably detailed, with painted faces, accessories, and props. Others are crude, hastily assembled from whatever materials were available, held together with hope and highly flammable materials. On December 31st, the dolls come out. Streets fill with these stuffed figures, lined up like condemned prisoners awaiting execution. As midnight approaches, people read testaments for their ecos viejos, mock last wills and testaments that humorously list everything wrong with the past year. Politicians who disappointed, personal failures, national embarrassments, health crisis, relationship disasters. Everything gets cataloged and assigned to the effigy. Then, at midnight, the burning begins. Matches are lit. Gasoline is applied. Safety is not the primary concern. And the Ecos Viejos go up in flames, sometimes exploding spectacularly if they were stuffed with fireworks. Entire neighborhoods become infernos of burning effigies, smoke billowing into the night sky, crowds cheering as the old year literally turns to ash. There's something primal and cathartic about this tradition. It's not subtle. It's not internalized. It's the opposite of Japan's quiet bell ringing or Spain's synchronized grape eating. This is loud, destructive, public rage against the passage of time and everything bad that came with it. The origins likely blend indigenous traditions with Spanish colonial Catholicism. Burning effigies has roots in various cultures' purification rituals, while the practice of reading satirical testaments comes from European carnival traditions. Mix them together in South America, and you get a New Year's tradition that's part therapy, part performance, part community bonfire. But there's another layer. Many Ecuadorians and Colombians believe jumping over the burning effigy brings good luck. So after setting these massive fire hazards ablaze, people literally jump over them. Some jump once. Some jump 12 times, once for each month. Parents carry children across the flames. The braver or more foolhardy participants jump as high and as close to the fire as possible. Emergency services in Ecuador report that New Year's Eve is one of their busiest nights of the year. Burns, smoke inhalation, and various fire-related injuries spike dramatically. But the tradition persists because it fulfills something deeper than safety concerns. It provides visible, tangible proof that the old year is gone, destroyed, completely eliminated. You can't be haunted by the past if you've literally turned it into smoke and ash. There's also a gender-bending tradition that accompanies the burning. Men dress as viudas, widows in mourning, wearing black dresses, wigs, and makeup. They parade through the streets with their soon-to-be-burned Ecos Viejos, pretending to grieve the old year while simultaneously mocking it. It's carnivalesque, absurd, and deeply rooted in the human need to laugh at death and time itself. Russia, swimming in frozen lakes and wishing on paper. Now we head to Russia, where New Year's Eve, Novi God, is celebrated with more fervor than Christmas, which Orthodox Russians celebrate on January 7th anyway. Russian New Year's traditions blend Soviet-era secularism, Orthodox spirituality, and a uniquely Russian tolerance for extreme cold. The celebration begins with Olivier salad, a mayonnaise-heavy potato salad that every Russian family makes, according to their grandmother's secret recipe, which is identical to everyone else's grandmother's secret recipe. The table is laden with food, pickles, herring, caviar if you can afford it, and enough vodka to warm yourself from the inside, since the outside is approximately minus 20 degrees Celsius. At midnight, Russians watch the Kremlin clock strike 12, broadcast on every television channel, similar to Americans watching the Times Square ball drop. But here's where it gets uniquely Russian. You have exactly 1 minute between midnight and 12:01 a.m. to write down a wish, burn the paper, drop the ashes into a glass of champagne or vodka, and drink the entire thing while the clock is still chiming. Yes, you're drinking paper ashes. No, nobody thinks this is weird. The wish must be written during that brief window, and the consumption must be immediate. If you manage this while also toasting with friends and family, your wish will supposedly come true. If you're too slow, too drunk, or too busy trying to avoid ingesting charred paper, well, better luck next year. But the paper drinking is just the beginning. Some Russians, particularly in Siberia, celebrate by diving into frozen lakes. Yes, in the middle of winter, in one of the coldest places on Earth, people cut holes in the ice and jump in. This isn't hazing, it's tradition. The practice, called polar bear swimming, or merzivani, from mors, meaning walrus, is believed to have health benefits and spiritual purification properties. The shock of ice-cold water is said to boost the immune system, increase circulation, and prove you're tougher than your soft city cousins who stayed inside by the fire. Participants typically drink vodka before, and after the plunge, though doctors strongly advise against this. But when has Russian tradition ever listened to doctors? The ritual goes: drink vodka, remove most of your clothes, run toward the frozen lake screaming, jump through the hole in the ice, immediately regret every decision that led to this moment, climb out as fast as possible, dry off, drink more vodka, and declare yourself cleansed for the new year. There's also Dead Moroz, Grandfather Frost, and his granddaughter Snegoroshka, Snow Maiden, Russia's answer to Santa Claus. The Dead Moroz is taller, scarier, carries a magic staff, and delivers presents on New Year's Eve rather than Christmas. He doesn't come down chimneys. He walks through the door like a civilized ice wizard, accompanied by his mysterious granddaughter, who has no parents and apparently just exists to help distribute gifts. Soviet authorities promoted Dead Moroz as a secular alternative to religious Christmas figures, and the tradition stuck. Today, people hire Dead Moroz impersonators to appear at parties, and children perform songs or poems in exchange for presents, because Russian children earn their gifts through performance like tiny, adorable court jesters. Another Russian tradition: children write letters to Dead Moroz, but instead of sending them via mail, some families tape the letters to windows. The cold is supposed to preserve the wish, literally freezing it until it can come true. Its magical thinking meets extreme climate adaptation. Greece, the onion hanging in St. Basil's pie. In Greece, New Year's Day is called Prodachronia, first day, and it's celebrated with traditions that are equal parts Christian, pagan, and delightfully bizarre. The most visible tradition? Hanging onions on your front door. Not decorative onions, not onion-themed wreaths. Actual full onions, dirt still clinging to the roots, hung from the door handle or above the threshold on New Year's Eve. In the morning, parents wake their children by gently tapping them on the head with the onion, because nothing says, "Happy New Year," like being hit with a vegetable that makes you cry. The symbolism is rooted in the onion's growth pattern. Onions sprout even in harsh conditions, pushing green shoots upward despite obstacles. In Greek tradition, this represents resilience, growth, and the continuation of life. The onion's layers symbolize the unfolding of the new year, each layer revealing something new. After the head-tapping ceremony, the onion is placed in the center of the house where it stays until it begins to sprout. The direction the sprouts grow supposedly indicates the family's fortune. Upward shoots mean prosperity. Downward means, well, don't think about it too hard. But the onion is just the opening act. The main event is Vassilopita, St. Basil's pie, a sweet bread or cake baked with a coin hidden inside. On New Year's Day, the head of the household cuts the Vassilopita in a specific order. First slice for Christ, second for the house, third for the poor, then slices for each family member in order of age. Whoever gets the coin will have good luck for the entire year. But there's strategy involved. Some families mark which slice goes to which person, ensuring that the youngest child or a struggling relative gets the lucky coin. Other families leave it purely to chance, letting fate decide who needs the boost most. This tradition commemorates Saint Basil the Great, a 4th century bishop who, according to legend, baked gold coins into bread to return confiscated wealth to the poor without humiliating them. Whether this actually happened is debatable, but the tradition stuck, and now Greek bakeries produce thousands of Vassilopoulos every December, with families ordering custom cakes days in advance. The moment of cutting the pie is ceremonial. Everyone gathers around. The knife is cleaned and blessed. The first cut is made with reverence. Then everyone holds their breath as pieces are distributed, watching carefully to see whose plate will bear the metallic glint of the hidden coin. Greece also has a first-footing tradition, similar to Scotland's, but with different specifications. The first person to enter the house on New Year's Day should be someone who embodies good fortune, ideally someone successful, healthy, and happy. Some families even pay a designated lucky person to be their first visitor, ensuring no accidents of fate. And then there's the tradition of breaking a pomegranate on your doorstep. At the stroke of midnight or first thing on New Year's morning, someone throws a pomegranate against the door or threshold with enough force to smash it open. The more seeds that scatter, the more abundance you'll have in the coming year. The red juice symbolizes life and vitality. The mess symbolizes, well, that someone will need to clean that up later. Children collect the seeds and count them, comparing numbers with siblings. Arguments ensue. Parents regret the tradition while simultaneously preparing to do it again next year, because you can't break a chain of luck that's been unbroken for generations. Brazil. White for peace, waves for Yamanya. Let's talk about Brazil, specifically Rio de Janeiro, where New Year's Eve, Réveillon, is celebrated with one of the world's most visually stunning traditions. Millions of people dressed in white gathering on Copacabana Beach at midnight. The tradition is called Réveillon de Copacabana, and it's part spiritual ceremony, part massive beach party. Over 2 million people crowd onto the sand, all wearing white clothing, which in Brazilian tradition represents peace, purity, and openness to the future. The sea of white-clad revelers stretches for miles, creating an ethereal scene under the fireworks that explode over the Atlantic. But the white clothing is just the beginning. Many participants, especially those practicing Afro-Brazilian religions like Candomblé and Umbanda, bring offerings for Yamanya, the goddess of the sea. These offerings include flowers, white roses and lily, champagne, perfume, jewelry, and small boats made of wood or styrofoam, loaded with gifts and set floating into the ocean. The tradition goes, as midnight approaches, you wade into the ocean, preferably timing it so you're jumping over 7 waves exactly at midnight. Each wave you jump represents a wish for the new year. 7 is a sacred number in Afro-Brazilian spirituality, representing completion and divine perfection. If a wave knocks you down before you complete all 7 jumps, that's an omen you'd rather not contemplate while soaking wet on a crowded beach. After jumping the waves, you turn to face the ocean and throw your flowers into the water, making offerings to Yamanya. If the ocean pulls your flowers out to sea, your offerings have been accepted and your wishes will be granted. If the flowers wash back to shore, well, Yamanya is returning them, and you might want to reconsider your requests or your spiritual approach. Some worshippers go further, launching small boats laden with gifts into the waves. These boats, decorated with ribbons and candles, bob on the surf before either sailing away, good omen, or capsizing and washing back, less good omen. The next morning, Copacabana Beach is littered with wilted flowers, broken boats, and thousands of empty champagne bottles, the physical remnants of millions of prayers and wishes. The fireworks display is spectacular. Rio's government spends millions on a pyrotechnic show that lasts over 20 minutes, synchronized to music, with explosions launched from barges offshore. The sky lights up in gold, silver, and white, never green and yellow, Brazil's national colors, as those are reserved for other occasions. The reflection on the water doubles the effect, creating a mirror of light and color that's genuinely breathtaking. But what makes this tradition particularly interesting is its religious syncretism. Catholic Brazil meets African spirituality, meets indigenous traditions, meets secular celebration, all compressed into one midnight moment on a beach. A grandmother might be Catholic, but still throw flowers to Yamanya. A young atheist might wear white just because everyone else does. The traditions layer on top of each other, none completely replacing the others, creating something uniquely Brazilian. There's also the tradition of eating lentils at midnight. Lentils, small and numerous, represent coins and wealth. Eating a bowl of lentils at midnight, preferably while still wearing white and wet from jumping waves, ensures financial prosperity. Some people carry dried lentils in their pockets all night, another layer of symbolic money attraction, added to the already complex ritual. And music, always music. Samba schools perform, Bands play on stages along the beach, and everyone sings. The most popular New Year's song is Ano Novo, Vida Nova, New Year, New Life, a samba about fresh starts and leaving the past behind. Strangers hug, kiss, dance together. For one night, Copacabana transforms into the world's largest open-air temple, where 2 million priests in white clothes pray to the ocean for another year of life. South Africa. Furniture out the window, if you're brave enough. In some South African communities, particularly in Johannesburg's Hillbrow neighborhood, there's a New Year's tradition that urban legend has inflated, but that has genuine historical roots. Throwing old furniture out of high-rise windows to symbolize discarding the past year. Now, before you start imagining sofas raining from the sky, let's clarify. This tradition is not widespread, and modern authorities actively discourage it, for obvious reasons involving gravity and human safety. But it did happen with some regularity in the 1990s and early 2000s, particularly in certain dense urban areas. The logic mirrors Ecuador's effigy burning or Denmark's plate smashing, physical destruction of the old to make room for the new. But while breaking plates on a doorstep or burning a stuffed doll carries minimal risk, throwing a chair from a 10th floor apartment window is, well, let's call it high-commitment symbolism. The tradition has roots in both African beliefs about cleansing and starting fresh, and possibly European influences from immigrants who brought their own furniture-tossing customs from Italy, where in some regions, old items were once thrown out windows on New Year's. Mix these influences in a post-apartheid society, experiencing rapid urbanization, poverty, and the psychological need for dramatic fresh starts, and you get occasional flying furniture. Police and emergency services would station extra personnel in affected neighborhoods, ready to respond to injuries from falling objects. Signs were posted warning pedestrians. The news would run stories every December. Please don't throw furniture. And yet, every year, a few items would still take flight. Why risk it? Because symbolism matters. If your old year was marked by unemployment, violence, or loss, throwing away the physical furniture you sat on during those hard times feels like actually throwing away the misfortune itself. It's magical thinking, yes, but magical thinking that provides psychological relief. More common and safer South African New Year's traditions include massive parties in the streets, particularly in Cape Town, where the Cape Town Minstrel Carnival, Kops Klops, takes place on January 2nd. Thousands of performers in elaborate costumes, faces painted in bright colors, march through the streets playing music and dancing. The carnival has complex roots in both African and slave traditions, emerging as a rare day when enslaved and oppressed peoples were allowed to celebrate publicly. The carnival's New Year's timing is deliberate. It marks not just a new calendar year, but the historical freedom to be visible, to celebrate, to take up space in public. The costumes are outrageously colorful, covered in sequins, beads, and mirrors. The music is a blend of African rhythms, American jazz, and Dutch folk songs, creating a sound that's uniquely Cape Malay. Food traditions include Gatsby, a submarine sandwich native to Cape Town, stuffed with chips, fries, meat, and sauce, meant to be shared among groups. On New Year's Eve, braai barbecues smoke in every neighborhood with boerewors, sausage, and sausages, kebabs, grilling while fireworks explode overhead. And fireworks, South Africa goes hard on fireworks. Despite regulations and safety campaigns, New Year's Eve sounds like a war zone in many neighborhoods. Dogs hide under beds. Car alarms go off constantly. The sky lights up with amateur pyrotechnics displays, ranging from impressive to deeply concerning. The emphasis in South African New Year celebrations is on community and loud, visible joy. After decades of apartheid, when celebrations were segregated and controlled, New Year's Eve became a night to reclaim public space, to be seen and heard, to celebrate survival and the possibility of better days ahead. Italy, red underwear and no lobster. Italy brings us a tradition that's both specific and somewhat mysterious in its origins. Wearing red underwear on New Year's Eve to attract luck, prosperity, and love in the coming year. The specifications matter. The underwear must be red, not pink, not burgundy, red. It should ideally be a gift from someone else, not purchased for yourself. It must be new, never worn before. And it should be worn specifically on New Year's Eve, not before and not after, though some people keep their lucky underwear for future desperate moments. Why red? In Italian culture, red has been associated with fertility, passion, and protection since at least Roman times. The color was believed to ward off evil and attract vitality. Over time, this got translated into the very specific tradition of lucky underwear, which Italian department stores now capitalize on by creating entire displays of red undergarments every December. Walk into any Italian store in late December, and you'll see racks of red brass, panties, boxers, and briefs, often decorated with additional lucky symbols: four-leaf clovers, horseshoes, ladybugs. Some are practical. Some are elaborate and lacy. Some are deliberately humorous, covered in gold coins or chili peppers. There's a style for every personality and level of superstition. Italians take this seriously enough that red underwear sales spike dramatically in the last week of December. Friends give each other red undergarments as gifts. Families exchange them. It's simultaneously intimate and completely socially acceptable. Did you get your red underwear yet? Is a normal question in Italian offices during the last week of December. But underwear is just one part of Italy's elaborate New Year's traditions. There's also the food, specifically lentils and cotechino, a large pork sausage. Eating lentils at midnight brings wealth because their small, coin-like shape symbolizes money. The more lentils you eat, the richer you'll be. Some Italians eat them by the forkful, speed eating as midnight strikes, cramming in as many future coins as possible. The cotechino is equally symbolic. This fatty, rich sausage represents abundance and prosperity. It's traditionally served with lentils, creating a plate that's both delicious and financially auspicious. The meal must be eaten right at midnight, not before, not after. Timing is everything. There's also the tradition of throwing old items out the window, similar to South Africa, but with some regional differences. In Naples particularly, old dishes, clothes, and small furniture pieces were traditionally tossed from windows at midnight, symbolically making room for the new. This practice has largely died out due to safety concerns and urbanization, but some neighborhoods still see the occasional flying object. One particularly unique Italian tradition: eating 12 grapes at midnight, one for each month, similar to Spain's tradition. But Italy adds a twist. After eating the grapes, you must leave exactly 12 pomegranate seeds on your plate, which should not be eaten. These 12 seeds represent wishes for the coming year that should remain intact and undisturbed. Fireworks in Italy are spectacular and somewhat illegal. Despite regulations, Italians love their fireworks, and New Year's Eve becomes a contest of who can produce the most impressive and most dangerous display. The noise is constant from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. The smell of gunpowder lingers until morning. And here's a strange one. Never eat lobster on New Year's Eve. Why? Because lobsters move backward, and eating them would mean your life would move backward in the new year. You want to eat fish that swim forward, cod, hake, and avoid any creature that retreats. It's sympathetic magic at its most literal. Turkey, sprinkling salt and pomegranate theology. In Turkey, New Year's Eve, Yılbaşı, is celebrated with a mix of traditions borrowed, adapted, and uniquely Turkish. One of the most striking visual elements: red is everywhere. Red decorations, red ribbons, red clothing. The color represents prosperity, vitality, and good fortune, similar to many Asian cultures. But Turkey adds its own flourishes. One tradition involves scattering salt in your home at midnight. Not gently sprinkling, scattering, throwing handfuls of salt into corners, under furniture, across thresholds. Salt, as a preservative, is believed to preserve good fortune and drive away evil spirits. It also represents purity and cleansing, both important themes for a fresh start. The salt must be coarse, not fine table salt. Rock salt is preferred, and it should be thrown with intention, not casually dropped. Some families recite prayers or wishes as they scatter the salt. The next morning, the salt is swept up and disposed of, carrying away any lingering bad energy from the old year. There's also Noel Baba, Turkey's version of Santa Claus, who was, historically, born in what is now Turkey as St. Nicholas of Myra. Noel Baba appears on New Year's Eve rather than Christmas, bringing gifts to children. In Turkey's secular tradition, Christmas is not widely celebrated, but New Year's is huge, allowing the gift-giving tradition to continue without religious overtones. Turkish families gather for enormous feasts. The table is laden with meze, appetizers, grilled meats, pilav, rice dishes, and countless desserts. Turkey's position as a bridge between Europe and Asia means the cuisine reflects both influences, creating meals that are elaborate and diverse. Eating well on New Year's Eve ensures you won't go hungry in the coming year. And then there's the pomegranate, which appears in Turkish New Year's traditions with the same enthusiasm it receives in Greece. In some regions, a pomegranate is thrown against the door or smashed on the threshold, with the scattered seeds representing abundance. In other areas, pomegranates are simply placed on the table as decorative symbols of fertility and prosperity. There are many seeds representing plentiful blessings. Some Turkish families practice a wish-writing tradition similar to Russia's, but with a twist. Wishes are written on paper, burned, and the ashes are scattered outdoors rather than consumed. The smoke carries your wishes to the heavens, delivering them directly to fate or God, depending on your belief system. Fireworks are massive in Turkish cities. Istanbul's celebrations along the Bosphorus are particularly spectacular, with fireworks reflected in the waters that divide Europe and Asia. The symbolism is potent. Turkey itself bridges continents, and New Year's Eve celebrates that unique position, looking both backward to rich history and forward to modern ambitions. China, red envelopes and the longest festival. While January 1st New Year's is celebrated in modern China, the real event is Chinese New Year, Chunji, which falls in late January or early February, based on the lunar calendar. But since China does acknowledge January 1st as Yuan Dan, New Year's Day, let's look at both traditions. For Yuan Dan, modern Chinese cities have adopted some Western-style celebrations, fireworks, countdown parties, and gatherings. But the traditions are relatively muted compared to the elaborate, weeks-long celebration of Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year, however, is where the real traditions live. And these traditions are so numerous, so specific, and so deeply embedded in Chinese culture that they deserve special attention. The celebration begins with thorough cleaning. Houses are swept, scrubbed, and purified to remove the old year's bad luck. But, and this is crucial, all cleaning must stop before New Year's Day. Cleaning on New Year's Day means sweeping away the good fortune that's just arrived. Brooms are literally hidden to prevent accidents of enthusiasm. Red dominates everything. Red lanterns, red paper cutouts, red clothing, red decorations covering every surface. Red represents luck, joy, and prosperity in Chinese culture. It's also believed to frighten away Nyan, a mythological beast that terrorizes villages, but is scared of the color red and loud noises. Which brings us to fireworks. Chinese New Year invented the firecracker tradition that spread worldwide. The noise, the smoke, the explosions all serve to drive away evil spirits and bad luck while welcoming good fortune. In rural areas and smaller cities, the noise is constant and deafening for days. In major cities, regulations have reduced the chaos, but fireworks still dominate the celebration. Then there are the red envelopes, hongbao, filled with money and given to children, unmarried adults, and sometimes employees. The amount doesn't matter as much as the gesture. The red envelope transfers good fortune and prosperity from the giver to the receiver. The money should be new bills, crisp and clean, because giving old, crumpled bills suggests your fortune is similarly worn out. Numbers matter when filling hongbao. 8 is lucky, sounds like prosper in Chinese. 4 is unlucky, sounds like death. 6 represents smooth fortune. So envelopes often contain 8, 88, or 888 yuan. Never 4, 40, or 400. Food traditions are elaborate and symbolic. Dumplings shaped like gold ingots represent wealth. Fish must be served whole, head and tail intact, to represent completeness and surplus. Noodles should be long and unbroken for longevity. Spring rolls represent gold bars. Every dish carries meaning. And then there's the reunion dinner on New Year's Eve, possibly the most important meal in Chinese culture. Families travel incredible distances to gather for this dinner. It's not optional. The Chinese New Year migration is the largest annual human movement on Earth, with hundreds of millions of people traveling home. Trains are packed, airports are chaos, roads are gridlocked. But everyone goes home for New Year's Eve dinner. During the meal, the family's eldest members receive the best seats and are served first. Respect for elders is demonstrated through seating arrangements, serving order, and toasting hierarchy. To do otherwise invites bad luck and family discord. At midnight, everyone stays up. Falling asleep means you're sleeping away your parents' or grandparents' longevity. So families play games, watch televised celebrations, set off fireworks, and fight exhaustion to ensure their elders live longer. The first day of the new year has more rules. Don't wash your hair. You'll wash away good luck. Don't sweep, same reason. Don't use knives or scissors. Cutting things on New Year's suggests cutting your fortune. Don't break anything, obviously bad luck. Don't cry, sets a sad tone for the year. Don't argue. Conflicts on New Year's mean a year of conflicts. The restrictions are so numerous that Chinese New Year can feel like navigating a minefield of potential bad luck. But the restrictions serve a purpose. They create mindfulness, forcing everyone to slow down, be deliberate, and start the year with intention rather than carelessness. Germany. Lead pouring and predicting the future. In Germany, Sylvester, New Year's Eve, includes a fascinating and slightly toxic tradition called Gen, lead pouring. Until it was banned in 2018 due to health concerns, Germans would melt small lead figures over a candle flame and then pour the molten metal into cold water. The resulting solidified shape would be interpreted to predict the coming year's fortune. The interpretation required imagination. A blob that looked like a heart meant love was coming. A shape resembling a pig meant prosperity. Pigs represent good fortune in German culture. A ship shape meant travel. A ball meant luck would roll your way. The vaguer the shape, the more creative the interpretation, leading to situations where everyone saw something different in the same metallic blob. But wait, you might be thinking, melting lead in your living room and inhaling the fumes sounds dangerous. You'd be correct. After decades of doctors pointing this out, the European Union finally banned lead-based fortune-telling sets, replacing them with tin or wax alternatives. The tradition continues, just with less neurotoxic metal involved. Germans also watch Dinner for One, a British comedy sketch that, inexplicably, became a German New Year's tradition. Every year, German television broadcasts this 18-minute sketch about an elderly woman's birthday celebration, where her butler must impersonate all her deceased friends during dinner. It's performed in English with German subtitles. Most British people have never heard of it. Germans watch it religiously every New Year's Eve. Why? Nobody's entirely sure. It started airing in the 1970s and somehow became synonymous with New Year's. Families gather around the television to watch this obscure British sketch, quote the famous line, "The same procedure as every year," and treat it as sacred tradition. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most frequently repeated television show ever, broadcast on multiple German channels every December 31st. Food traditions include Berliner, jelly donuts, and sauerkraut, fermented cabbage. Eating sauerkraut on New Year's brings wealth because cabbage was historically seen as green gold, valuable for survival through winter. Some people go further, eating exactly 7 spoonfuls of sauerkraut for maximum luck, because 7 is a powerful number. Fireworks in Germany are legendary. December 31st is the only day when private citizens can legally purchase and set off fireworks, and Germans take advantage. The sky erupts at midnight. Every neighborhood becomes a war zone of light and noise. Emergency rooms fill up with firecracker injuries. It's chaos, tradition, and possibly several violations of fire code, all compressed into one explosive night. India. Temples, beaches, and 1,000 different celebrations. In India, New Year's is complicated because India has multiple New Year's celebrations depending on religion, region, and calendar system. The Gregorian January 1st is celebrated, especially in cities and among younger generations. But there's also Diwali, Hindu New Year in some regions, Ugadi, Telugu and Kannada New Year, Pthandu Tamil New Year, and Vaisakhi Punjabi New Year, among others. For January 1st celebrations, major cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore host parties, fireworks, and countdown events. Indians have adopted and adapted Western New Year's traditions, mixing them with local customs to create something unique. One widespread tradition, visiting temples at midnight. Regardless of how secular your celebration has been, many Indians make a point of visiting a temple as the new year begins, offering prayers for the coming year. Hindu temples stay open all night on New Year's Eve, filled with worshippers seeking blessings. Food varies dramatically by region, but sweets are universal. Mithai, traditional Indian sweets, are shared with neighbors and family. In South India, payasam, a sweet pudding, is prepared. In North India, gulab jamun, or jalebi, might be served. The sweetness symbolizes hopes for a sweet year ahead. Some Indians write resolutions on paper and symbolically release them at midnight, either by burning them, floating them in water, or simply tucking them away in a sacred place. The act of writing makes the resolution concrete, transforming vague hopes into articulated goals. Beaches in coastal cities like Goa, Mumbai, and Chennai become massive celebration zones. Thousands gather to watch fireworks over the ocean, dance to live music, and welcome the new year with their feet in the sand, combining India's love of water, sacred in Hindu tradition, with modern party culture. The diversity of India means New Year's traditions vary wildly from state to state, religion to religion. A Punjabi celebration looks different from a Gujarati one, which differs from a Malayali celebration. But common threads run through all: family, food, prayer, and the universal human desire to mark time's passage with meaning and community. Romania, bear dances, and the dead who walk. Let's head to Romania, where New Year's traditions blend Christian Orthodox practice with folklore so ancient and dark that it makes modern horror movies look tame. In rural Romanian villages, particularly in Moldova and Bukovina regions, New Year's Eve brings out the bear dancers. Men dress in actual bear skins, complete with heads and claws still attached, and perform ritualistic dances from house to house. These aren't cute costumes. These are full bearskins, heavy and primal, that transform the wearer into something between human and animal. The bear dance, Jokul Ursului, has pre-Christian roots in the worship of bears as sacred animals. The dancers move in specific patterns, mimicking a bear's movements. Aggressive lunges, protective stances, the raw power of a predator. The performance is accompanied by drums and flutes, creating a soundscape that's both hypnotic and unsettling. Each household visited must pay the dancers, offering money, food, or drink. In return, the bear dance brings protection and good fortune for the coming year. But there's an implicit threat in the ritual. The bear is powerful and dangerous. You want its strength on your side, not turned against you. So you pay, you watch, and you hope the dancers move on to the next house satisfied. But the bears are just one part of Romania's dark New Year's traditions. There's also the belief that on New Year's Eve, the veil between the living and dead grows thin, allowing spirits to walk among the living. To protect against malevolent spirits, garlic is hung above doors and windows. Not in cute decorative bundles, in serious, aromatic quantities that would make vampires in horror movies actually historically accurate. Some villages practice plugukarol, the little plow ceremony, where groups of young men go door to door, pulling a decorated wooden plow while singing ritual songs that mix Christian prayers with pagan fertility rites. The plow symbolizes agricultural renewal and the promise of good harvests. The songs invoke both God and older earth spirits, hedging spiritual bets across multiple belief systems. And then there's Sorkova, a tradition where children visit houses carrying decorated branches and reciting poems wishing health and prosperity. The branch, usually from a cherry or pear tree, is gently tapped against adults while the children chant blessings. The adults then give the children money or sweets. It's wholesome on the surface, but rooted in ancient tree worship and the belief that touching someone with a blessed branch transfers vitality and good fortune. Food traditions include sarmale, cabbage rolls, kozanic, sweet bread, and pomana porcului, feeding of the pig, which involves slaughtering a pig and sharing the meat with neighbors and family. The pig sacrifice has pre-Christian origins in winter solstice rituals where blood was offered to ensure the sun's return and spring's arrival. Romanian New Year's is a collision of eras. Christian Orthodox prayers beside pagan rituals, modern celebrations alongside traditions that would be at home in the Bronze Age. The result is a holiday that feels both festive and slightly dangerous, where joy and superstition dance together in bearskins. Scotland, Part 2. The dark side of Hogmanay. We talked about first footing earlier, but Scotland's Hogmanay traditions go much deeper and much darker than we covered. Let's talk about what happens before the first footer arrives. In ancient Scottish tradition, Hogmanay marked the time when the dead could return. Celtic beliefs held that the winter solstice and the New Year period were when the boundary between worlds thinned, allowing spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, to cross over. This wasn't celebrated. It was feared. To protect against unwanted spiritual visitors, Scots practiced seining, a purification ritual involving the burning of juniper branches throughout the house. This smoke was believed to cleanse the home of evil spirits and bad luck. Every room would be smoked out, with family members walking through the acrid clouds while reciting prayers or charms. In some Highland communities, they practiced first footing with an even darker twist. If the wrong person entered first, particularly someone who embodied bad omens, the family might refuse them entry entirely, sometimes violently. There are historical accounts of people being turned away at sword point because their hair color, physical features, or reputation made them unacceptable as first footers. The burning of the clavey in Burghead is another ancient tradition that continues today. A barrel filled with tar and wood is set ablaze and carried through the town on January 11th, following the old Julian calendar. The flaming barrel is eventually placed on a stone altar where it burns down. Once the flames die, locals scramble to collect pieces of the charred wood, which are kept as protective talismans against evil and bad luck throughout the year. There's also the tradition of redding the house, a deep cleaning that goes beyond physical tidiness. It's a spiritual purge. Ashes are removed from fireplaces not just for cleanliness, but because they contain the old year's energy. Water used for cleaning must be taken from a living source, a running stream at dawn on New Year's Day, ideally collected in silence without speaking to anyone you meet. And in some communities, particularly in the Orkney Highlands, there's a tradition of guising, where young people dress in disguised costumes and go door to door, performing skits or songs. But these aren't cheerful Christmas carols. They're often dark, satirical performances, mocking authority figures, dramatizing death, or telling stories of local tragedies. The disguises serve a dual purpose, entertainment and protection, allowing the performers to speak truths that couldn't be spoken openly, hidden behind masks and personas. Scotland's Hogmanay traditions carry the weight of centuries of hardship, poverty, clan warfare, and harsh winters where survival was never guaranteed. The rituals aren't just about celebration. They're about control, protection, and the desperate hope that you can influence fate through right action, right offerings, and keeping the wrong energies outside your door. Austria and Germany. Part 2. Krampus didn't leave. He's just waiting. In alpine regions of Austria, Bavaria, and parts of Switzerland, the Christmas season demon Krampus doesn't actually leave when Christmas ends. He has a companion, and that companion appears on New Year's Eve. Her name is Perchta, and she's far worse than Krampus. Perchta, also called Berchta, is an ancient Germanic goddess who became demonized by Christian traditions. She appears during the 12 nights between Christmas and Epiphany, January 6th. But New Year's Eve is when she's most active. Her role, to ensure that winter traditions are being properly followed. And if they're not, she'll slit open your belly, remove your internal organs, and stuff you with straw and rocks. The traditional rules to avoid Perchta's wrath include completing all spinning and weaving before New Year's Eve, no work left undone, eating specific ritual foods on New Year's Day, usually fish and porridge, and keeping your house and behavior spotless throughout the 12 nights. Perchta is often depicted as having one large foot, the goose foot, and carrying a knife. In some regions, she leads a procession of unbaptized children, souls of those who died before receiving the sacrament, who follow her in an eternal parade of the damned. In other versions, she's accompanied by Perchtin. Wild spirits, they can be benevolent, Shane Perchtin, or malevolent, Shiak Perchin, depending on how well you've behaved. On New Year's Eve, in some Austrian villages, men dress as Perchtin in elaborate, terrifying masks and fur costumes. They run through the streets, banging drums, cracking whips, and chasing spectators. The beautiful Perchtin dance gracefully, blessing homes with bells. The ugly Perchtin are violent, aggressive, and actively try to frighten people, especially children and young women. This isn't performance art. This is ritual chaos, a controlled release of wildness meant to scare away evil spirits while simultaneously acknowledging the dark, dangerous aspects of winter and human nature. The Perchtenlauf, Perchten Run, is both terrifying and sacred, a tradition that predates Christianity by centuries. Modern Austrian and German New Year's celebrations exist in tension with these older, darker traditions. You might attend a sophisticated ball in Vienna, champagne and waltzes in elegant ballrooms, while in rural villages an hour away, masked figures are running through streets, threatening to disembowel anyone who didn't finish their spinning. It's a reminder that European New Year's traditions have layers, and if you dig deep enough, you find something primal, something that remembers when winter was a genuine threat and supernatural beings were as real as the snow. Estonia, eating 7 times for 7 kinds of strength. Estonia brings us a tradition that's both simple and gluttonous. Eating 7, 9, or 12 meals on New Year's Day, not courses, full meals. The logic is rooted in Estonian folk belief that the number of meals consumed on New Year's Day determines your strength, luck, and prosperity for the coming year. 7 meals give you the strength of 7 people. 9 meals give you the strength of 9. 12 meals? You're basically a superhuman. The meals don't have to be large. but they must be distinct. Breakfast counts as one. Mid-morning snack counts as two. Late morning meal counts as three. And so on throughout the day until you've achieved your targeted number. Some families prepare food stations throughout the house, allowing members to graze continuously without the burden of formal sit-down meals. The tradition has agricultural roots. In Estonia's harsh climate, having enough food to eat multiple meals on New Year's Day demonstrated that you'd successfully survived harvest season and winter preparations. It was a display of abundance, a physical manifestation of successful labor. Eating multiple meals wasn't gluttony. It was proof that you'd done well enough to afford celebration. But there's a darker element. Some food must be left on the table after each meal. This food is meant for the spirits of ancestors who visit on New Year's Eve. You don't clean everything away immediately. You let the food sit, offering sustenance to the dead before eventually clearing it in the morning. The belief holds that well-fed ancestor spirits provide protection and guidance for the living. Estonian New Year's also includes divination traditions, particularly lead pouring, before it was banned, similar to Germany, and wax pouring, where melted wax is dripped into cold water and the resulting shapes interpreted. But Estonia adds a specific twist. The shadows cast by the wax shapes are what matter. You hold the solidified wax near a candle and examine the shadow it casts on the wall. The shadow's shape reveals your future. A ship's shadow means travel. A horse means success and speed. A bird means messages or news arriving. A tree means growth and stability. The interpretations require imagination and often lead to family debates about what exactly that shadow resembles, which is probably part of the tradition's appeal. Estonians also practice melting tin for good luck. Small pieces of tin are melted and poured into water, and the resulting shapes are analyzed for fortune-telling. But tin has lower toxicity than lead, showing that Estonian fortune-telling evolved with at least some consideration for public health. And there's the tradition of watching sunset on New Year's Eve. In Estonia's northern latitude, winter days are short, and sunset comes early, around 3:30 p.m. on December 31st. Watching the sun set on the old year is considered important, a moment to reflect on what's ending before the long darkness that precedes midnight and the New Year's arrival. Vietnam and Tet, the debt that cannot cross the threshold. Vietnamese New Year, Tet Nguyen Dan, follows the lunar calendar like Chinese New Year, but Vietnam has developed distinct traditions around the holiday that reveal deep cultural values about honor, family, and the weight of obligations. One of the most important Tet traditions, paying all debts before the new year begins. And we don't just mean credit cards. We mean all debts, financial, social, emotional. Any obligation you carry must be settled before midnight on New Year's Eve. Owe someone money? Pay it back. Have a disagreement with a family member? Resolve it. Borrowed tools from a neighbor? Return them. The philosophy is that you cannot start fresh while carrying the old year's burdens. Debts are spiritual weight, and crossing into the new year while indebted invites bad fortune. This creates a frantic few days before Tet, when people scramble to settle accounts. Markets stay open late. Banks are crowded. Families hold reconciliation meetings. It's logistically challenging and emotionally exhausting, but the alternative, carrying debt into the new year, is culturally unacceptable. Then there's Zong now, similar to Scotland's first footing, but with Vietnamese characteristics. The first person to enter your home on New Year's Day determines your fortune for the entire year. Families carefully select their Zong Na guest, choosing someone who embodies success, happiness, and good character. Some families pre-enter their own homes, with the father leaving just before midnight and returning immediately after to ensure no random visitor accidentally becomes the first footer. But if the wrong person enters first, someone associated with bad luck, recent tragedy, or simply the wrong astrological sign, it's considered catastrophic. Some families have been known to refuse entry to friends and relatives if their timing is wrong, explaining apologetically that their presence, while normally welcome, would curse the household if they entered first on New Year's Day. Food traditions are elaborate. Banjung, a square rice cake wrapped in banana leaves and filled with mung beans and pork, is essential. The square shape represents earth, while round cakes, bande, represent the sky. Together, they symbolize harmony between heaven and earth, yin and yang, the cosmic balance necessary for prosperity. Making banjung is a multi-day process involving soaking rice, preparing fillings, carefully wrapping everything in precise layers of banana leaves, and then boiling the cakes for up to 12 hours. Families make them together, the process itself a bonding ritual. The cakes are then offered to ancestors at the family altar before being eaten. Speaking of ancestor altars, Tet involves extensive preparation of these sacred spaces. Every Vietnamese home has an altar with photos of deceased family members, incense holders, and offering plates. Before Tet, the altar is cleaned, new photos are added if family members have passed during the year, and elaborate food offerings are prepared. The belief is that ancestors return during Tet to visit their living descendants. The quality and quantity of offerings reflects the family's respect and devotion. Neglecting the ancestor altar isn't just rude, it's inviting disaster. Disrespected ancestors can withdraw their protection, leaving the family vulnerable to misfortune. There's also the tradition of selecting the first word you hear on New Year's Day. Words carry power in Vietnamese. Tradition and the first word heard sets the tone for the entire year. Families try to control this by speaking only positive, auspicious words on New Year's morning. Happy, prosperous, healthy, fortunate. Negative words, complaints, or curse words are strictly forbidden. Children are coached on what to say. Teenagers are warned. Even the television and radio must be carefully controlled to ensure no negative news or unfortunate language enters the home during those crucial first moments of the new year. Vietnamese New Year's is perhaps the most obligation-heavy of all New Year's traditions. It's beautiful, meaningful, and absolutely exhausting. The emphasis on debt repayment, ancestor veneration, and controlled behavior reflects a culture that values harmony, respect, and the belief that you have direct influence over your fate through right action. Mexico. Suitcases, color-coded underwear, and grape-eating cousins. Mexico's New Year's traditions are a delightful chaos of Spanish influence, indigenous beliefs, and uniquely Mexican adaptations that have evolved into something wonderfully specific. Let's start with the suitcases. If you want to travel in the coming year, you must take your suitcase and walk around your house or around the block at midnight, not carrying the suitcase casually, running with it, sprinting. The faster you run, the more you'll travel. Some people do this seriously, expensive luggage bouncing behind them as they race down the street at 12:05 a.m. Others treat it as comedy, but they still do it because you never know. The tradition has obvious roots in sympathetic magic, performing the action you want to happen, traveling, to encourage fate to make it happen. But Mexico takes it literally and enthusiastically. Entire neighborhoods fill with people running while pulling suitcases, creating a scene that must be bewildering to anyone unfamiliar with the tradition. Then there's the underwear, similar to Italy's red underwear tradition, but with Mexican elaboration. The color you wear determines what you attract in the new year. Red underwear attracts love and passion. If you're looking for romance, wear red. Yellow underwear attracts money and prosperity. Financial security? Yellow. Green underwear attracts health and well-being. Recovery from illness? Green. White underwear attracts peace and harmony. Seeking tranquility? White. Pink attracts friendship and positive relationships. Social connections? Pink. The specificity creates a dilemma. What if you want multiple things? Some people wear 2 pairs of underwear, layering colors to cover multiple bases. Others change underwear at midnight, starting with one color and switching to another. The logistics are complicated, but fortune favors the prepared, even if preparation means wearing multiple layers of color-coded undergarments. Mexico also adopted Spain's 12 grapes tradition, but added Mexican flair. Not only must you eat 12 grapes at midnight, one for each chime, but you must make a wish with each grape. That gives you exactly 1 second per grape to eat it and formulate a wish. Try that while also managing your underwear strategy and preparing to run with your suitcase. Food traditions include punch, a warm fruit punch served throughout the holiday season, and buñuelos, fried dough drizzled with syrup or sprinkled with sugar. Tamales are essential, and families spend days preparing hundreds of them to share with neighbors, friends, and anyone who stops by. The tradition of burning managotes, similar to Ecuador's Acos Viejos, exists in some Mexican regions. Effigies of politicians, celebrities, or symbolic representations of bad luck are constructed and burned at midnight. The practice is less widespread than in Ecuador, but carries the same cathartic energy of destroying the old to make space for the new. Mexican families also gather for La Cena de Año Nuevo, New Year's dinner, which rivals Christmas dinner in importance. The meal includes pozole, bacalao, salt cod, romeritos, a traditional herb stew, and various regional dishes, depending on which part of Mexico you're in. The diversity of Mexican cuisine means New Year's dinner varies dramatically from state to state. And there's the tradition of toasting at midnight with sidra cider rather than champagne. Mexican sidra is sweet, bubbly, and comes in distinctive bottles. The pop of cider bottles opening at midnight competes with fireworks for audio dominance. Everyone toasts, everyone drinks, and everyone shouts, "Feliz Año Nuevo," while trying not to drop their suitcase or think too hard about their underwear choices. Ethiopia. A new year in September and coffee ceremonies. Ethiopia operates on its own calendar, placing New Year's Day in Kadash on September 11th or September 12th in leap years. This alone sets Ethiopia apart, celebrating new beginnings when most of the world is well into autumn. But even beyond the calendar difference, Ethiopian New Year traditions reflect the country's unique history, Orthodox Christian traditions, and coffee culture. A celebration begins with church services. Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity is ancient and distinct from both Catholic and Protestant traditions. Churches hold special masses on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, with priests wearing elaborate robes and carrying ceremonial crosses, umbrellas, and sistrums, musical instruments that date back to ancient Egypt. The services are long, often lasting several hours, conducted in Ge'ez, an ancient liturgical language that's no longer spoken in daily life, but preserved for religious purposes. Worshippers stand for most of the service. Ethiopian Orthodox churches traditionally don't have pews, creating a physically demanding act of devotion. After church, families gather for coffee ceremonies, buna, which are less casual drinking and more elaborate ritual. The ceremony takes at least an hour and follows precise steps. Fresh coffee beans are washed and roasted over an open flame. The smell fills the house, announcing to neighbors that a ceremony is happening. The beans are then ground by hand using a mortar and pestle. This isn't quick. It's methodical, rhythmic work. The ground coffee is boiled in a jibina, a clay pot with a long neck and spherical base. The coffee is poured from a height into small cups without handles. The first round is called abel, the second tona, and the third baraka, blessing. You're expected to participate in all 3 rounds. Refusing coffee, especially during New Year's celebrations, is considered deeply rude. The ceremony is social, spiritual, and communal. While drinking, people discuss the past year, share hopes for the new one, and strengthen family and community bonds. Food includes doro wat, a spicy chicken stew, and injera, the spongy sourdough flatbread that serves as both plate and utensil. Injera is made from teff, an ancient grain native to Ethiopia, giving the bread a distinctive sour flavor and springy texture. Meals are communal, with everyone eating from the same large platter, tearing off pieces of injera to scoop up stews and vegetables. Children go door to door singing songs and giving flowers, particularly daisies which bloom in abundance during Ethiopia's September spring. In return, they receive small gifts, money, or food. It's similar to caroling, but tied specifically to New Year's rather than Christmas. There's also a tradition of slaughtering a sheep or goat for the feast, sharing the meat with family, neighbors, and the poor. The act of slaughter is ritualized, performed according to religious guidelines, with prayers offered and blood disposed of properly. It's a reminder that Ethiopian traditions maintain connections to agricultural and pastoral practices that urban Western celebrations have largely lost. Bonfires are lit on New Year's Eve in some regions, particularly in rural areas. Young people jump over the flames, similar to traditions in Iran and Latin America, the fire symbolizing purification and the burning away of the old year's misfortunes. Ethiopian New Year's reminds us that the Gregorian calendar's dominance is a relatively recent global phenomenon. For thousands of years, different cultures marked new beginnings at different times, based on agricultural cycles, religious events, or astronomical observations. Ethiopia's September New Year makes more sense in its context, marking the end of the rainy season and the beginning of the harvest, a natural time for renewal and celebration. Iran and Nowruz, the oldest New Year celebration still practiced. While most of this piece is focused on December 31st, January 1st New Year's traditions, we need to talk about Nowruz, the Persian New Year, because it's arguably the oldest continuously practiced New Year celebration in the world, dating back at least 3,000 years to ancient Zoroastrian traditions. Nowruz occurs on the spring equinox, typically March 20th or 21st, marking the astronomical beginning of spring. Unlike the arbitrary January 1st date, Nowruz is tied to actual celestial events, the moment when day and night are equal length. The sun crosses the celestial equator, and the Earth's tilt shifts toward longer days and warmth. The celebration lasts 13 days and involves elaborate preparations beginning weeks in advance. The centerpiece is the Haft-Seen table, a display of 7 items that begin with the Persian letter Sin. Sabze, sprouted wheat or lentils, representing rebirth. Samanu, sweet pudding, representing affluence. Senged, dried oleaster fruit, representing love. Seer, garlic, representing medicine and health. Seb, apple, representing beauty. Sumk, sumac, representing the sunrise. Circa, vinegar, representing age and patience. Each item carries symbolic weight, and the table becomes a physical representation of hopes for the new year. Families add other items too: a mirror for reflection, candles for enlightenment, colored eggs for fertility, goldfish for life, coins for prosperity, and a poetry book, usually Hafez or Rumi. But the preparation goes deeper. Before Nowruz, Iranians practice kune tekuni, literally shaking the house, an intensive spring cleaning that makes Western spring cleaning look like light dusting. Every surface is scrubbed, carpets are beaten, windows are washed until invisible. Cupboards are emptied and reorganized. Broken items are repaired or discarded. The entire house is purged of the old year's accumulated dust, grime, and bad energy. New clothes are purchased for every family member. You must have at least one completely new outfit to wear on Nowruz. Ideally, everything from underwear to outerwear should be new, symbolizing fresh starts and renewal. On the last Wednesday before Nowruz, Iranians celebrate Shaharshan Besuri, the festival of fire. Bonfires are lit in streets and open spaces. People jump over the flames while chanting Zardi the man as toe, Sorki the toe as man, meaning, give me your beautiful red color and take back my sickly yellow pallor. The fire is believed to burn away illness, bad luck, and the previous year's troubles, while transferring health and vitality to the jumper. The fire festival has Zoroastrian roots in the worship of fire as a sacred, purifying element. Despite Islam becoming Iran's dominant religion, these pre-Islamic traditions survived, adapted, and integrated into the culture so deeply that attempts to suppress them have consistently failed. At the exact moment of the spring equinox, families gather around their half-seen table. The precise timing matters, determined by astronomical calculations. Everyone must be present, dressed in new clothes, with family members who've traveled long distances to be home for this moment. When the equinox occurs, families embrace, exchange gifts, and older family members give younger members crisp new banknotes. The 13 days of Nowruz involve visiting family and friends in order of age, with the youngest visiting the eldest first. You visit parents, then grandparents, then aunts and uncles, then older siblings, and so on. Each visit involves tea, sweets, nuts, and conversation. By the end of the 13 days, you've reconnected with your entire extended family and social network. On the 13th day, Sajda Bidar, Iranians leave their homes and spend the day outdoors, picnicking in parks or countryside. It's believed that staying indoors on the 13th day invites bad luck. The sabzi from the half-seen table is taken outside and thrown into running water, symbolically casting away any ill fortune or bad energy that might have accumulated during the celebrations. Young single people tie grass blades into knots while making wishes for marriage, a tradition that transforms parks into fields of knotted grass by day's end. Nowruz is celebrated not just in Iran, but across Central Asia, the Caucasus, and parts of the Middle East, from Afghanistan to Azerbaijan, Tajikistan to Turkey. Each region has variations, but the core traditions remain: fire jumping, half-seen tables, new clothes, family visits, and the 13th day picnic. What makes Nowruz extraordinary is its persistence. Empires have risen and fallen. Religions have changed. Political systems have been overthrown. Yet Nowruz continues, unbroken, for 3,000 years. It predates Islam, Christianity, and even the major forms of Buddhism. It's a direct link to ancient Persia, to Zoroastrianism, to a time when fire was sacred and the spring equinox was the most important day of the year. Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and the 10 days of awe. The Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, occurs in autumn, September or October, on the Hebrew calendar, and inaugurates the Yamim Yoreim, the days of awe, a 10-day period of introspection and repentance, culminating in Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Unlike most New Year's celebrations, which emphasize parties, noise, and external festivities, Rosh Hashanah is contemplative, spiritual, and focused on judgment. According to Jewish tradition, Rosh Hashanah is the day when God judges every person, inscribing them in either the Book of Life or the Book of Death. The verdict isn't final until Yom Kippur, giving you 10 days to repent, make amends, and alter your fate. The central ritual of Rosh Hashanah is the sounding of the shofar, a ram's horn trumpet that produces a haunting primal blast. The shofar is blown 100 times during Rosh Hashanah services in specific patterns. Tekaya, 1 long blast; Shavarim, 3 medium blasts; and Teruah, 9 short blasts. The sound is meant to awaken the soul, call people to repentance, and symbolically confuse Satan so he can't properly prosecute the Jewish people before God. The shofar isn't musical. It's raw, harsh, intentionally unsettling. Hearing it produces a visceral response, a recognition that something serious is happening, that this isn't a casual holiday, but a moment of cosmic significance. Food traditions are deeply symbolic. Apples dipped in honey represent wishes for a sweet new year. Round challah bread, instead of the usual braided loaves, represents the cycle of the year and the continuity of life. Pomegranates are eaten with the blessing that we may be as full of good deeds as the pomegranate is full of seeds. Fish heads are served with the prayer that we be a head and not a tail, meaning that we should be leaders rather than followers. New fruits, those you haven't eaten yet that season, are consumed to represent new experiences and opportunities. But there's also what you don't eat. No nuts, because the Hebrew numerical value of nut equals the value of sign, and you don't want that association. No sour or bitter foods, as they might sour the year ahead. Everything is carefully considered. Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Jews practice tashlik, a ceremony where they go to a body of flowing water, preferably one containing fish, and symbolically cast off their sins. Pieces of bread are thrown into the water, representing the sins being carried away. Pockets are turned inside out and shaken, ensuring nothing sinful remains attached to you. The practice has Kabbalistic elements and was controversial when first introduced in medieval times, with some rabbis concerned it resembled pagan water rituals. But it persisted and is now standard practice, with rivers, lakes, and seas filling with Jews on the afternoon of Rosh Hashanah, throwing bread while reciting prayers. The period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is for reconciliation. You must seek out anyone you've wronged during the year and ask their forgiveness. This isn't optional. God can forgive sins against God, but only humans can forgive sins against humans. So you make phone calls, send letters, visit people you've hurt, and genuinely apologize. If the person refuses to forgive you, you ask twice more on 3 separate occasions. If they still refuse, the sin is considered transferred to them, and you're released. But you must ask sincerely, 3 times, making real attempts at reconciliation. Yom Kippur itself involves fasting for 25 hours, no food, no water. Number leather shoes. Leather represents comfort and luxury, which you're denying yourself. No washing, no perfume, and no sexual relations. You spend the entire day in synagogue, praying, confessing sins, and hoping your name gets inscribed in the book of life. The fast ends with one final, longest blast of the shofar, a tekiah jadol that lasts as long as the shofar blower's breath holds out. When it finishes, your fate for the coming year is sealed. Jewish New Year's isn't about hoping for good luck or performing rituals to attract prosperity. It's about moral accounting, facing your failures, seeking forgiveness, and trying to become a better person. It's heavy, demanding, and spiritually exhausting. But it's also profound, offering a structured path towards self-improvement and reconciliation that most secular New Year celebrations lack. The Americas, indigenous New Year traditions that predate colonization. Before Europeans brought their January 1st calendar to the Americas, indigenous peoples had their own New Year celebrations tied to solstices, equinoxes, harvest cycles, and astronomical observations. Many of these traditions continue today, sometimes parallel to and sometimes integrated with January 1st celebrations. The Inca celebrated Inti Raymi, Festival of the Sun, on the winter solstice, June in the southern hemisphere. The celebration honored Inti, the sun god, marking the sun's return and the promise of warmer weather and successful crops. The festival included animal sacrifices, elaborate processions, and rituals performed by the Sapa Inca, emperor, himself. While the Spanish conquest suppressed Inti Raymi, it was revived in the 20th century and is now celebrated annually in Cusco, Peru, with thousands of participants reenacting the ancient rituals. Modern Inti Raymi blends historical reconstruction with contemporary indigenous identity, reclaiming pre-colonial traditions while acknowledging their interrupted history. The Maya had multiple calendar systems, with New Year celebrations varying by which calendar was being followed. The Hab calendar's New Year began on July 26th, marked by ceremonies invoking the rain god Chak and agricultural deities. Archaeological evidence suggests elaborate rituals including bloodletting, incense burning, and possibly human sacrifice, though scholars debate the extent and context of sacrificial practices. Contemporary Maya communities, particularly in Guatemala and southern Mexico, maintain variations of these traditions, often syncretized with Catholic saints' days. The day might be called a saint's feast, while the underlying rituals honor older gods under Christian names, a survival strategy developed during colonization. The Pueblo peoples of the American Southwest celebrate multiple New Year ceremonies tied to solstices. Hopi and Zuni ceremonies mark the winter solstice with Kashina dances, where masked dancers embody spiritual beings who bring blessings, rain, and renewal. These ceremonies are not public entertainment, but sacred rituals, close to outsiders or with strict protocols for non-native observers. The Iroquois Confederacy celebrated Midwinter Ceremony, a week-long New Year festival occurring after the first new moon after the winter solstice. The celebration includes Thanksgiving ceremonies, the stirring of ashes, symbolically awakening last year's fires, dream sharing and interpretation, and ceremonial games. The False Face Society, a medicine society, performs healing rituals wearing wooden masks representing powerful spirits. These traditions were actively suppressed by the U.S. and Canadian governments through the 19th and early 20th centuries. Indigenous ceremonies were banned, participation could result in imprisonment, and children were taken to boarding schools specifically to prevent transmission of traditional practices. That any of these traditions survived is testament to the determination of indigenous peoples to maintain their cultures despite systematic attempts at erasure. In recent decades, there's been a resurgence of indigenous New Year celebrations as communities reclaim and revitalize traditions that were nearly lost. These aren't historical reenactments performed for tourists, but living traditions practiced by communities for whom they carry spiritual significance and cultural continuity. The diversity of indigenous New Year traditions across the Americas reflects the diversity of indigenous peoples themselves. There is no single Native American New Year, just as there's no single Native American culture. Each nation, tribe, and community had its own calendar, its own relationship with seasonal cycles, and its own ways of marking beginnings. What unifies these traditions is their connection to place, to specific landscapes and ecosystems. Unlike the portable, universal Gregorian calendar, indigenous calendars are rooted in local observations. When does the river flood? When do salmon return? When do certain plants bloom? When do specific constellations appear? New Year isn't an arbitrary date, but a response to actual environmental changes that matter for survival. Australia and New Zealand, Summer New Year and the Forgotten Resolutions. For Australians and New Zealanders, New Year's Eve falls in the middle of summer, completely inverting the Northern Hemisphere's winter holiday season. Christmas means beaches, not snow. New Year's means outdoor barbecues, not huddling indoors. This creates a distinctly different energy. Instead of dark, cold nights that encourage introspection and indoor celebration, Australian New Year's is bright, hot, and aggressively outdoor. Sydney's harbour becomes the epicenter, with one of the world's most famous fireworks displays launched from the harbour bridge at midnight. But beyond the fireworks, Australian New Year's traditions are fascinatingly laid back compared to the elaborate rituals we've explored elsewhere. There's no specific food you must eat, no color of underwear that determines your fate, no bears to dance with or plates to smash. Instead, there's barbecue. Throwing shrimp on the barbie is a stereotype, but New Year's barbecues are definitely a thing. Families and friends gather, cook outside, drink beer or wine, and wait for midnight in shorts and t-shirts, possibly while fighting off flies and getting sunburned. Some Australians make New Year's resolutions, but research shows Australians are among the least likely to keep them, possibly because making serious life commitments while drunk on a beach at 1 a.m. isn't conducive to follow through. The Sydney Harbour fireworks display is broadcast internationally, making Sydney one of the first major cities to celebrate each new year due to time zones. This gives Sydney's celebration disproportionate global visibility, creating the impression that Australian New Year's is particularly special when, in reality, most Australians are just having a barbecue somewhere. In New Zealand, New Year's traditions are similar. Outdoor celebrations, barbecues, beach parties, and fireworks were permitted. Many areas have banned private fireworks due to fire risk and injury rates. Some New Zealanders attend music festivals, particularly Rhythm and Vines in Gisborne, marketed as one of the first places on Earth to see the sunrise on New Year's Day. The Maori, New Zealand's indigenous people, have their own new year, Matariki, celebrated in June when the Pleiades star cluster becomes visible in the pre-dawn sky. Matariki is a time for remembering the dead, celebrating the present, and planning for the future. It was suppressed during colonization, but has been revitalized in recent decades and became an unofficial public holiday in 2022. Matariki traditions include lighting fires, flying kites, singing waiata songs, sharing kai, food, and studying the Matariki star cluster to predict the coming year's fortune. A bright, clear cluster means abundant crops. A hazy, obscured cluster warns of a difficult year ahead. The contrast between January 1st summer parties and Matariki's winter ceremonies reflects the tension between colonial and indigenous cultures in settler societies. Both New Years are celebrated, but they represent different cultural values and relationships with time, land, and community. We've traveled the world, exploring traditions from bear dances to burning effigies, from synchronized grape eating to frozen lake swimming. And if you've been paying attention, you've noticed patterns. Noise to frighten evil, fire to purify, food to ensure abundance, color and clothing to attract specific fortunes, water for cleansing, jumping for elevation, first footers to control who crosses your threshold. These rituals persist not because they work in any measurable, scientific sense, but because they fulfill a psychological need so fundamental that humans keep inventing versions of the same practices across unconnected cultures. The need is simple: control. New Year's is terrifying if you think about it honestly. You're moving forward in time, whether you're ready or not. You have no idea what's coming. The people you love might die. You might lose your job. Illness could strike. Relationships could collapse. The future is a void of uncertainty, and all you can do is fall into it and hope you land okay. Humans can't tolerate that level of helplessness. So we create rituals, actions we can perform that make us feel like we're influencing our fate. We can't actually control the future, but we can control whether we eat 12 grapes at midnight. We can't prevent bad luck, but we can wear red underwear and jump over 7 waves and throw bread into rivers. The rituals provide structure to hope. They transform vague anxiety about the future into specific actions that feel purposeful. And because everyone around you is performing similar rituals, you're not alone in your anxiety. You're part of a community of people all trying to impose order on chaos together. Anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss argued that rituals create meaning through symbolic action, allowing humans to navigate the gap between the world as it is and the world as we wish it to be. New Year's rituals exist in that gap, that space between our current reality and our hoped for future. Psychologically, research on ritualistic behavior shows that performing rituals actually does reduce anxiety, even when people don't believe the rituals have supernatural efficacy. The act of doing something, anything, provides a sense of agency. Studies have found that people who perform rituals before stressful events, exams, job interviews, performances, report feeling more confident and often perform better, not because the rituals had magic power, but because they reduced anxiety and created a sense of mental preparation. New Year's rituals serve this function on a massive cultural scale. They're collective anxiety management disguised as celebration. But there's something else going on too. These rituals create shared experience. When millions of people in Spain eat grapes at midnight, they're synchronized in a moment of collective participation. When Brazilians gather on Copacabana Beach in white clothing, they're creating temporary comunitas, a state of social unity where normal hierarchies and divisions temporarily dissolve. French sociologist Émile Durkheim argued that rituals serve to strengthen social bonds and reinforce collective identity. When you jump over 7 waves with thousands of others, you're not just hoping for good luck. You're affirming membership in a community, participating in a shared identity that says, we are Brazilian, or we are believers in Yamanya, or simply, we are people who do this thing together. The specific traditions might seem arbitrary or even absurd from outside, but from inside, they're meaningful precisely because they're shared, because they connect you to your family, your community, your culture, and your history. But here's where it gets complicated in the 21st century. New Year's traditions are increasingly performed for social media, documented, curated, and broadcast as content. The intimate family ritual becomes a public performance. The spiritual practice becomes an Instagram photo op. Scroll through social media on New Year's Eve, and you'll see thousands of people documenting their grape eating, their suitcase running, their fireworks watching. The ritual is performed, but it's also performed for an audience, mediated through screens, filtered, and hashtagged. Does this diminish the ritual's meaning? Or is documentation simply the modern form of collective participation, extending the community beyond those physically present to include virtual witnesses across the globe? Scholars debate this. Some argue that social media presence during rituals represents fragmented attention that undermines the ritual's psychological and spiritual effects. If you're focused on getting the right camera angle for your red underwear selfie, you're not fully present in the moment, not fully engaged in the ritual's purpose. Others argue that social media creates new forms of collective effervescence, Durkheim's term for the emotional energy generated by group rituals. When you post your half-seen table and receive comments from Iranians worldwide, you're participating in a global community of celebration that transcends physical proximity. The truth is probably somewhere between. Social media changes rituals, but doesn't necessarily destroy them. It adds a layer of performance and documentation that didn't exist before. But humans have always been performers of their own traditions, always aware of being watched by family, neighbors, and community. What social media does is make that audience potentially infinite, which changes the nature of participation in ways we're still figuring out. As we close this journey around the world's New Year's traditions, here's what strikes me most. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We cannot help but impose narratives, rituals, and significance onto the simple fact of time's passage. December 31st, becoming January 1st, is astronomically meaningless. It's not a solstice or equinox. It doesn't mark any actual change in the natural world. But we've decided it matters, and so we've created thousands of traditions to mark that mattering. Some traditions are ancient, carrying the weight of millennia. Others are recent, invented within living memory, but performed as if they're timeless. And new traditions are being created right now, emerging from immigrant communities blending old and new cultural practices, from young people inventing contemporary rituals that speak to their experiences. New Year's traditions remind us that culture is alive, constantly evolving while maintaining threads of continuity with the past. They show us that humans everywhere share certain fundamental concerns. We fear the future, we hope for better days, we seek community, we want control over our lives, and we need rituals to structure our relationship with time. The specific traditions, whether you're eating grapes, jumping waves, wearing red underwear, or running with a suitcase, matter less than the underlying truth they all express. We are not passive in our journey through time. We mark its passage. We create meaning from its movement. We gather together and say, collectively, we acknowledge this moment. We honor this transition. We hope together for what comes next. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the rituals don't need to work in any magical sense to be valuable. Maybe their value lies in what they reveal about us, about our need for hope, for community, for action in the face of uncertainty. So as you approach your next New Year's Eve, wherever you are, whatever traditions you follow or don't follow, remember that you're participating in something deeply human. Whether you're eating 12 grapes, jumping over waves, burning effigies, or just having a quiet night at home, you're acknowledging time's passage and humanity's eternal hope that the next rotation around the sun might be better than the last. And in a universe of entropy and chaos, that hope, that act of marking time and meaning, is perhaps the most revolutionary thing humans do. Happy New Year! May your grapes be seedless, your waves be gentle, your underwear be lucky, and your journey through time be filled with moments worth celebrating. We've covered thousands of miles, dozens of countries, and centuries of traditions. From the frozen lakes of Siberia to the sun-drenched beaches of Brazil, from ancient Persia to modern metropolises, humans mark new beginnings with ritual, hope, and often spectacular displays of collective behavior that would seem absurd if they weren't so universal. What have we learned? That New Year's traditions are simultaneously deeply specific and strangely similar. The details vary wildly. The shapes of the rituals, the foods involved, the colors worn, the words spoken, all carry local cultural fingerprints. But underneath, the impulses are remarkably consistent. Purification, protection, prosperity, and community. We've learned that time is an abstraction humans desperately try to control through action. We can't stop its passage, but we can mark it, celebrate it, divide it into manageable units, and create moments where we collectively acknowledge its movement. We've learned that superstition and rationality aren't opposites, but companions. Even people who don't believe their rituals have supernatural power still perform them, because belief isn't required for meaning. The act itself carries significance, connects us to tradition, provides psychological comfort, and creates shared experience. We've learned that New Year celebrations often mask deeper anxieties. The noise, the fire, the elaborate preparations, all these serve to distract from and manage the fundamental uncertainty of existence. We're walking into an unknown future, and that's terrifying. So we eat grapes, wear specific underwear, jump over things, and create elaborate plans to influence fate. And we've learned that despite globalization, homogenization, and the spread of Western calendar systems, local traditions persist. They adapt, they evolve, they sometimes incorporate new elements, but they don't disappear. Because traditions aren't just habits. They're carriers of cultural identity, links to ancestors, and expressions of values that matter too much to abandon just because someone in another country celebrates differently. The beauty of New Year's traditions lies in their diversity and their universality. Every culture has found its own way to mark time's passage, but we're all marking the same fundamental human experience, the journey forward into uncertainty, together. So whether you're planning to eat exactly 12 grapes, wear lucky underwear, jump over 7 waves, run with a suitcase, break plates at your friend's door, dive into a frozen lake, burn an effigy, visit a temple, fast for 25 hours, or simply raise a glass at midnight, you're participating in humanity's oldest continuous project, making meaning from time, creating hope from ritual, and refusing to face the future alone. The traditions may be different, but the hope is universal. And in a fractured, complicated world, that shared hope, that collective acknowledgement that we all want better days ahead, might be the closest thing we have to a universal language. Happy New Year, however and whenever you celebrate it. May your traditions bring you joy, your rituals bring you peace, and your journey through time bring you everything you hope for, plus a few surprises you didn't know you needed.